Hi and welcome to Jarama Racetrack here in Madrid. I guess at this point you're probably wondering why someone wearing a Mondraker t-shirt is zipping up some race ovals. Well, that's because I'm going to be taking one of the coolest cars ever made for a drive. Before I tell you all about the latest collaboration between Mondraker and Golf. Motorsport has always been cool and always will be. Now, the modern cars that you see in Formula One, they're utterly breathtaking in terms of visually what they look like and what they're capable of. F1 cars are technological marvels. The way that they can accelerate, the way that they can decelerate, they're like the cornering speed, the traction, the way that they handle on the ground, and the way that the drivers can maintain such staggeringly high speeds lap after lap. I mean, really, they are a far cry from the simplicity and just the sheer brawn of powerful old cars like this. 7 litres V8, naturally aspirated power. The engine is literally next to my head, right there. It is so loud in this thing, and everything in here is vibrating. You can just feel that this car, just the urgency, this thing just wants to go. And there's nothing in here that's going to help keep this car on the racetrack. Seriously powerful engine. This completely relies on the driver's instinct, knowing the track, and of course, pure courage. Cars in this era were so much simpler. There were no turbochargers, the huge engines. They had no sequential gearboxes, no Venturi tunnels to help suck them and give downforce onto the racetrack. Just the driver, the racetrack, and a really angry car that just wants to go. For me, cars of this generation specifically were the coolest by far. But more importantly, it was those that drove them. The drivers that stepped into these, without doubt, they were like rock stars at the time because of the sheer risk and how difficult motor racing was. Now, there's far too many to just list off here. But a little story here about Jackie X. Now, Jackie X, an incredible career, super cool guy. But Jackie X had 8 Formula 1 Grand Prix to his name, and he also took the 24-hour Le Mans 6 times. One of them in 1969. He also, under the Golf livery, took it in 1975, but this time with Derek Bell, another legend of the sport and another hero. This time though, it was in a Mirage GR8. But in fact, even just being here at this circuit in Madrid reminds me of 1970, where he had a terrifying crash. Now, Formula One in those days, the regulations were far less than what they are today. And the fuel tanks were literally to the side of the drivers, and as a result, his car caught fire immediately. How he even got out, I will never understand. Now, he was horrifically injured, and somehow, 17 days later, not months or weeks, 17 days later, he was back inside a Formula One car on the grid at Monaco. Drivers in this era, they were just built differently. But the racers knew the risk. They knew that every time they got inside the car, it could be dangerous, but that was part of the appeal for them. It was racing on the absolute edge the whole time. I guess that's why they were seen as heroic, because of the fact every time they got behind the wheel, every time they got on the grid, they were quite literally risking their lives. And some of those racers started talking to the governing body to actually try and get some standards changed. One of those was Jackie Stewart. And at the time, Jackie X was one of the drivers that actually said, not sure about this because essentially this is removing part of the challenge of motor racing. Yeah, that might sound crazy today, but weirdly, it actually makes sense to me. Formula One today, though, is still inherently dangerous, despite the fact drivers have got really good protection built into the capsules that they sit in. Now, definitely a driver today can have a horrific crash and quite literally walk away from it. If it was to be a like-for-like crash in a car like this, it would have spelt certain death. Jackie Oliver, Denny Helm, Pedro Rodriguez, Derek Bell, Bruce McLaren, and of course Jackie X. Well, the bike then, well, that reflects all of them and all of this. Check this out. As you can see, Golf have chosen the Dusty X. This is our flat bar e-gravel bike, but it's set up for the urban jungle. I'm going to tell you all about the bike in a little while. I've got somewhere special to take you first. Come with me. Okay, you're not going to believe this. We have been invited to the Joe Ramirez Museum in Barcelona. And as you're going to see in it, well, you've probably got an idea of what we're about to see in it. Come with me for a second. This place has got everything a true motorsport fan would want to see. I had a quick look in here a minute ago and I could not believe what I saw. The show time's over, okay? I'm going to lose this suit because I've seen what is in there. And this is a tribute, and it's been fun to wear this for the GT40 and riding a bike, but I need to pay my respects to what we're about to see. Now, you might be able to see a little red glow just behind me. That's just part of it. That is every single one of the 19 racing suits that Michael Schumacher won in. The actual suits in there. That's just a small part of what's in here. Wait for this. Okay, this is a little bit more fitting for me. Now, you might remember in the previous video that we did with Golf, we visited the Rothko collection in the UK. Now, this was a collection of cars. Now, of course, this was celebrating motorsport, but what we have here is completely different. Now, yes, I am sat in front of a Formula One car, and yes, of course, this has got the Golf colours on it. This one, of course, is Lando Norris's car. Now, what I need to draw your attention to here is the fact that everything in here is about a celebration of motor racing. That means everything that the drivers do. Now, this car, of course, is the absolute top of the game when it comes to technology, just like the GT40 was back in the day, but at the completely opposite end of the spectrum. Now, as astonishing as both of those cars are and were, the fact is they're useless without the drivers. Now, this place, you can feel the love that has gone into this collection. This is everything about motorsport, and that is all about the drivers. I'm just going to run you around a super quick whistle stop because this place has got everything, and I'm going to be showing you the bike in a second that reflects what I'm talking about. But have a quick look at this. I've seriously got to try not to lose the plot here because just the amount that's in here. You've got Verstappen behind you, you've got Rosberg, you have Vettel, you've got Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, you've got Alonso, you've got Jacques Villeneuve, you've got Damon Hill, Nigel Mansell, and of course in the corner, Ayrton Senna there. But over this side, this is where it starts going back to where we started at the beginning of the story. On the way past, so we've got James Hunt, we've got Niki Lauda. I mean, like, this is absolutely wild. But this one here, this one belongs to Denny Hulme. And as you can see from the Golf racing on it, this goes straight back to what we were talking about with that GT40 out on the track. When you look back at the icons of the sport, I think they truly come from here. Of course, we've seen so much happen in motorsport and we've seen the growth of the technology in there, but it all stems from the drivers and what all of these drivers universally achieved with what they had in terms of equipment. To me, it's just astonishing. The whole thing about the motor racing is just seeing how advanced the tech is now and the equipment and the safety compared to where it started. And if you just look back at this stuff, you look how simple the helmets, the eyewear, even the racing suits, and looking at the archived images that are just on the wall behind here, looking at Denny racing in this little F1 car, there's no protection whatsoever. It looks like any form of crash, that's it. You are not going to be in a good way. But the whole colouring and the dirt on the overalls, this is where the paintwork and this comes in. And I think when you look at it in this context, you can start to see the inspiration behind it. Now, some cool facts about this. Each of these 50 bikes, there are only 50. This one is number 1 of 50. Each of them will look slightly different. So yes, they are bearing the same colourway. Yes, they're bearing the dusty graphic with the Golf colours on the fork and on the top tube with the US flag there as a little nod to the racing. But the fact is, the way that these frames are finished, they're done by hand, and each of them is done by a single painter. Now, on a mass production basis, if you're looking at frames, the way they're painted, you will see that they do them in batches. So they'll do the front triangles, then they'll do the rear triangles, then they'll do the fork maybe, the rockers, and they'll be done in slightly different patches, essentially. And as a result, if you were doing something with custom detailing, you can actually tell the difference between them even if the colours are the same. And that's because if it's done by custom painters by hand, how that painter is feeling on that day will be different to the next. Perhaps they've got more energy, perhaps they've got less energy. Perhaps when they're doing the hand printing on those tubes, it's going to be slightly different to the next one. So the best way to ensure consistency is having one painter finish at one frame at a time. So to get the base done, and then all of the detailing is done by one. So 16 hours of work on every single one of these. And that means every single one of the 50 frames is slightly different. So you are truly getting something custom and bespoke. I just think it's a super cool finish, combining that sort of the dirty overall look of what I still deem as the coolest era in motorsport. Now, it has been super cool bringing the bike, I'd say bringing it home to sit around where the inspiration came from. But you know me, I'm all about the bikes. So let's get this thing out of here, out on the streets, and take it for a rip, shall we? So you might notice that the Dusty is actually one of our e-gravel bikes. But this one, this is a Dusty X. So everything about this has been geared up for the concrete jungle. The flat bars, the full-length fenders, the built-in lights. This thing just wants to go. Powering the Dusty X is the Mahle hub drive system. Now, unlike our mountain bikes that use the centre drive system mounted in the bottom bracket, the good thing about the hub drive system is when you exceed the maximum power, there's no resistance to overcome. It's already rotating. It is the perfect use for it in an urban environment. So off the lights, I've got 55 Newton meters of torque to help me absolutely gun it. And in my mind, when I look down and see these gold colours, it feels a bit like a race car to me. And I love that. Now, battery size on here is a 350 watt hour tucked in the down tube, but thanks to the fact it doesn't have the big motor, the whole bike is so discreet looking. And you can also have an additional range extender with this. But this bike really is just made for blasting the urban jungle. So damn. Okay, so this is the bike in all its glory. So I've been enjoying pedaling it around a bit, but let's have a little closer look at the frame, the fork, the transmission that's on this very special Dusty X. So just like our gravel version of the same frame and fork, nothing has changed on here except the appearance and the fact that this one has a flat bar and is set up a little bit different for the urban environment. So the frame itself is made of our Stealth Air Carbon, and just like the gravel counterpart, it has the hidden housing guide in there. So internal cable routing, super sleek, and it's actually really nice and easy to work on. It has the same Stealth Air Carbon fork, and as you can probably see, you have mounting points on the fork and on the top tube, as well as two in the front triangle, so you can mount various forms of luggage, other components, bottle cages, whatever you see fit that you're going to use the bike for. Of course, it does have the flat bar setup on there. That's our S9 handlebar on the top there, made by On-Off Components. Nice and compliant, matches up with the nice foam grips there, super comfortable. Now, full-length mudguards is something that's key to any urban bike, because sooner or later you're going to be riding in the wet and you don't want your regular clothes to get covered in grime off the road. These are perfect and they blend in so nicely. Now, you may well notice that in the riding footage I was riding, you could see the lights on here. Now, the lights are integrated into the design of this bike and they're powered off the battery. You don't need any separate batteries for them. So we've got our own On-Off Component seat post here with the integrated light, which I think that is one of the coolest little features on the bike that's just subtle and tucked away there. Now, the light is the perfect height for all drivers to be able to see you because it's at eye level or higher. So it's not hidden away by any part of the bike. Perfect positioning. The front light is mounted in front of the stem, so you have the choice of the angle, so you don't want to dazzle drivers. Gives you the optimum position in there. Let's not forget that lights, you can turn them off, but why would you when they're powered by the battery? After all, lights in an urban environment, they're not to see with, they're to be seen. Shifting duties come from SRAM via the Force E-Tap AXS transmission. 12 speed there, and you can go banging through the gears no matter what you're doing and how much power you're putting down. This thing can shift under load, which is absolutely perfect to work with that Mahle hub drive system on there. Man, sweet looking ride. Add on to the rolling stock of the bike. This one is running on the Mavic Cosmic SL wheels. Now the combination of the bladed spokes with the deep section carbon rims, and then of course the huge refused tyres by Maxxis on here at 40C, means you've got loads of compliance. What does that mean? Comfort. Loads of it. You can just steam through rough city roads on this. Loads of comfort in the saddle, out the saddle, doesn't matter. And then thankfully, stopping the bike, you've got really predictable brakes. Now that is something that you didn't have on the GT40, which was famous for having brakes that would cook after a long time in the endurance races. So you've got 160mm rotors, front and rear, which pair up perfectly with the traction on offer from these tyres. And of course, you've got the level, silver level brakes. Well, that is just about enough city bashing for me. What a great couple of days. The GT40, the racetrack, Heroism, and of course the Dusty X urban environment. Man, you know, a little bit of me would have liked to have kept hold of that race suit, but in truth, I don't really know what I'd have done with it. I just loved how it made me feel, knowing that so many iconic drivers have worn exactly that, but getting to look down and see this as it blasting around the streets definitely reminded me of so many of those iconic drivers. But unlike the GT40s and those wild cars of the past, you don't actually need to be a hero to get on one of these. It does make you feel like one though. I'd love to know what you think of the bike, what you think of this project, what did you think of that GT40? Let us know in the comments underneath, and thanks for watching. See you in another video soon. Take care now.